The Pittsburgh Steelers offense has not had its greatest year, but they've had playmakers keeping the team alive. Chief among them this week was Diontae Johnson. He's taken true steps to take his game forward and become a real number one receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to break down what he's done that has improved his game, as well as what that might mean for the future of the wide receiver position in the city of Pittsburgh. Joining me to talk about that is Tony Serino. He's back on the show, and he's got a lot to say. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. We remind you that we are brought to you today by On Location. Super Bowl 56 is at SoFi, less than 100 days away. And On Location is the official hospitality partner of the NFL. It's the only place to score a once-in-a-lifetime Super Bowl ticket and experience package. Select your exact seats and choose from elite experiences featuring an exclusive pregame celebration with NFL legends, 5-star LA hotels, and food by the great Wolfgang Puck. Visit onlocationexp.com/SB56 for more information or search Super Bowl On Location. That's onlocationexp.com/SB56 or search Super Bowl On Location. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I am your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Remember, you can find the show on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Odyssey. Like this, hit the like button on this video. If you're watching it on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, leave us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, and you get a special shout out at the end of the show. Thanks so much for tuning in as always. Joining us is our old friend, our old buddy, Tony Serino. It's not a Tony Tuesday, but it's time for a Tony Wednesday. Woo! Steelers got the dub this weekend. Tony, how you feeling?
Feeling fantastic. Listen, anytime you can watch Ben Roethlisberger beat the Baltimore Ravens, outplay Lamar Jackson. The last time they're going to face each other potentially in Heinz Field, maybe they play one more time after this. We'll see. Yeah, a lot of fun. And I'm happy to be here talking Steelers with you, Chris.
I'm really happy too, Tony. It's sad when I'm not able to get you on during the week. Getting the band back together to talk about something. But it seems ideal to do this right after they beat the Ravens, because even though this isn't 2008 Steelers versus Ravens, this is still a major rivalry where these teams respect each other. They're both still in the contention for everything. The Ravens were the number one seed going into this last week, and they're still up there, but. This was a big win to save the season. But one of the heroes of this game, and I've talked a lot about TJ Watt, we've talked a lot about Ben Roethlisberger, but the guy who Ben Roethlisberger was throwing to this week, Diontae Johnson, and it wasn't just this week. He's been doing this all season long, but he was phenomenal in this game. When you go back and you look at what he was able to bring just consistently, even though he dropped a touchdown in the first half, and a touchdown that everyone was thinking like, oh man, if he had just caught that, we'd have been in this. But he still had 8 catches for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's really changed his game this year. He was always smooth and tough to lock down as a receiver in and out of his breaks, Tony. But now he's catching the ball and showing he can be a complete receiver. Right now, this week, he has 914 receiving yards. Who would have thought that could have happened with the way this passing offense has been? And he leads the team with 6 touchdown receptions. What have you seen that has made you so impressed by Diontae Johnson?
I think it's a couple things. I think number one, you hit on the consistency. I think that was a big part of his game that he needed to fix, which is that you just couldn't rely on him in these spots. Last year, you remember the game, I believe it was against Buffalo, where he got benched in the first half. Just mind-boggling drops, right? I mean, he's done a better job this year, I think, of being a more physical receiver, even though he's not a big guy. But I think he's done a better job of catching the ball and catching the ball in tight windows. But really, last year, that wasn't even the issue. I mean, the issue was just kind of mental, kind of breakdowns and kind of it feeding in on itself, right? He gets in his own head, and then all of a sudden, it's like, they couldn't even play him in the first half of that Buffalo game. And I think the number one thing for him has been the consistency. He's always been a really smooth route runner. He's always been great off line of scrimmage. All of that remains the same. I think he's getting better as the year goes on. Him and Ben Roethlisberger have a great rapport. But for me, the number one thing for him was just always about being consistent in that and being able to be a reliable target, especially in an offense now that doesn't have a lot of reliability on it, right? I mean, we talk about Chase Claypool. I've certainly talked about Chase Claypool plenty of times. And then, Juju is out for the year now. So they needed Diontae to step up and be this guy. And I think you talk about him as a number one receiver. I am in complete agreement with you on that one. He has been really impressive. I think he is a true number one now in this offense.
That's what the Steelers needed. They needed somebody who was going to take over that role. For years we thought that might be Juju's role in the offense. Well, last year you thought maybe Chase Claypool can be that prototypical number one wideout. But I think another thing that to speak of Diontae Johnson, like you said, when he made mistakes last year, it would cave in on him. He would start he would start making more mistakes and not being able to lock down with, and that's gone. And I think it's such a good sign for what the Steelers are able to do to help players grow. I talked about this with Arthur Motes on yesterday's episode. It's just, people were dooming Diontae Johnson last year. They said, that's a bust. He can't catch the ball. And now he's the best receiver on the team. He's looking very consistent, and he's one of the better receivers in football. It's just a sign that guys can grow, guys can get better. But also, it brings into question, the Steelers have to start thinking about the future on offense like they've thought about the future on defense. And they don't have a lot of offensive guys signed to future contracts right now. They're going to keep them for a long time. Diontae Johnson looks like, regardless of the quarterback that you bring in to succeed, Ben, he needs to be part of that plan because he gets so open. It makes him already such a big threat.
Yeah, the question is, like, next year, if the Steelers were to go out and get a new quarterback, right? Well, what does that look? And this is not a slight on Ben, but obviously we know Ben Roethlisberger, 39 years of age, not able to make the kind of throws he made,
Right.
5-10 years ago. So if you get a quarterback who can make more throws, especially throws down further down the field, what does that does that unlock more of Diontae's game? And what he kind of is being a little bit held back right now because of the fact that Ben's not able or Ben's not willing to make all the throws down the field. And I'm with you. I think Diontae Johnson's a huge key to this offense going forward, right? You look at kind of a nucleus. We talked about this before, but this nucleus of the team, if they figure out the offensive line, you got Freiermuth, who looks like he's going to be, fairly decent as a tight end. I think Najee Harris looks like he's going to be pretty good when it comes to the running back position. And then you have a Diontae Johnson at wide receiver, and forget about the rest of it. We'll see if Juju wants to come back and what happens with Claypool. But you just put that together, right? You have the core nucleus of skill positions at wide receiver, tight end, and running back, and these guys are all young. You get a quarterback around that. And again, I think that this is a nucleus that you can certainly build on the offensive side. And I think Diontae is a key to that. And you're right; he's going into his fourth year next year. You got to get him locked up. I don't want to see Diontae Johnson playing for another team.
Right. And another thing about this is, I've talked a lot about this season about leadership. And sometimes leadership doesn't come from the guy that's in the middle of the huddle saying, "Let's go, everybody," and getting it the way Cam Heyward does for this team. Sometimes it comes by leading by example.
Yeah.
And Diontae Johnson talked about leading by example last week when we spoke to him. But you saw how that leading by example changed something. And Minkah FItzpatrick talked about that after the game against the Ravens. He made his second interception of the year. It was the second game in a row he had an interception. And I'm not allowed to talk about things that I see at Steelers practice until a player talks about them. But he revealed something that we couldn't say, because one thing that Diontae Johnson that we did know from training camp was that, before and after every practice, Diontae Johnson is out there. He does this thing where he pretends that he's running. Someone throws a tennis ball, he'll catch it, or someone throws a football and he'll catch it. And he's always just practicing catching from different angles. Minkah FItzpatrick said that inspired him to go out and say, "I need to catch like that. I need to practice like that." And it wasn't something that he did it. He did in the middle of practice. He waited after everything was done. Everyone had broken the team down. They did all their walkthroughs. He just asked for a trainer to come throw him some different footballs, and he was just catching them in different directions. And here he is making 2 interceptions. Not like Minkah didn't have ball skills, but still it motivated him to do something. And that's infectious. That's something that you see a guy that leads by example. That's what you want on your team. And that's what the Steelers need. It's not just his on-field production, but a guy that can inspire even great players like Minkah FItzpatrick to work even harder.
Yeah, and it reminds me of, obviously, look, Antonio Brown has his own issues and whatnot, but you remember when Antonio Brown was Steeler, he was one of the hardest workers on the team.
He was a work ethic animal.
Yeah, I mean, an absolute monster. The guy was out there for, an hour after every training camp practice, just on the jugs machine. So yeah, I know it reminds me of that. It is obviously great to hear that about Diontae, because this is a kid who look, I've said this from when he got back in the league. You start seeing him in that first couple training camp practices, you tell there's something different about this kid, especially when it came to his his route running and his release and his smoothness as a receiver. And what I've, you love to watch about a kid like that is that it has grown into this, and he didn't let the drops last year kind of derail his career. Now, it's interesting when you look back at those drops, by the way, he had 3 drops his rookie year, right? 14 last year, and then just 2 this year. It's sometimes drops can just be cyclical. It's a weird year, but it doesn't necessarily have to be kind of this derailing of your career. And I'm glad that Diontae hasn't let him be that. And it seems like he's got a very bright future ahead of him.
He absolutely does look that way, even if the Steelers have to, take some time to find their next quarterback that's going to be the heir of Ben Roethlisberger. Well, we've talked a lot about Diontae Johnson. We're going to take some snap count analysis because there was some really interesting numbers from guys who stepped up on both sides of the ball. Tony and I are going to give you our thoughts on that. But first, I got to talk to you guys about On Location. On Location is one of our great sponsors here with the Locked On Steelers podcast. Super Bowl 46 is at SoFi in less than 100 days away. And On Location is the official hospitality partner of the NFL. It's the only place to score a once-in-a-lifetime Super Bowl ticket and experience package. Select your exact seats at the Super Bowl and choose from elite experiences featuring an exclusive pregame celebration with NFL legends, 5-star LA hotels, and food by the great Wolfgang Puck. Visit onlocationexp.com/SB56 for more information or search Super Bowl On Location. That's again, onlocationexp.com/SB56 or search Super Bowl On Location. We're also brought to you by betonline.ag. BetOnline has you covered all season long with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues the march to the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On, all capital letters, all one word, and you'll receive that 50% welcome bonus. From basketball to football to NHL to boxing to UFC, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all of the amazing offers available for the 2021 season at BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, and BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, as always, when we do back-to-back ad reads, we keep it rolling here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Tony, let's look at these snap counts right here because we'll start with defense because that's usually where it's the most telling of something that's going on there. But you looked at the way they lined up this week. Ahkello Witherspoon played 92% of the snaps at cornerback, and Justin Lane.
Can we have a moment of silence?
Oh man, he's not even letting me get to the point.
Yeah.
The point is James Pierre didn't play a single.
Well, I just want a moment of silence.
All right.
For James Pierre. Yeah.
All right. Moment of silence for James Pierre.
Yeah. All right.
Moment
I appreciate that.
Well, but to be fair, James Pierre has fought really hard. This is not a slight against him, but he had a rough week against Cincinnati. Right. And when you're a young player and you get picked on like that, it shows like, hey, okay, you've been fighting, and he's certainly had his ups this year. He made the game clinching interception against the Denver Broncos. It's not like he's not like he'll never get a shot again. But they needed to make a change out there. And Ahkello Witherspoon, he brought it this week.
How about Ahkello Witherspoon? Because this was a guy that was getting, lambasted on Twitter about the Henry Ruggs play back in the game against the Raiders. The guy couldn't get a hat. I mean, when was the last time Ahkello Witherspoon was active in a game? I guess he was active because Hayden was hurt, but regardless of that, he hadn't been active.
He wasn't a priority.
It just was not even. Yeah, exactly. And so for him to come out and start this football game, I thought a couple thoughts on this. Number one, you're absolutely right. I mean, he played a really good game, and I think this kind of vindicates all the people who were mad at Kevin Colbert earlier in the year for this trade. Because remember, they traded draft pick. I believe it was a fifth-round draft pick to get Witherspoon.
A fifth-round draft pick.
Yeah, so a lot of people were critical of Kevin Colbert for that move, given that the guy couldn't even get a hat on Sundays. So there's that aspect of this. And then you talked about Justin Lane and his usage in this game, 9 snaps in this one. It is interesting, though, Chris, that you've now had both James Pierre and Witherspoon jump Lane essentially on the depth chart, in kind of 2 years now. Lane was a former 3rd-round pick, I want to say.
Yeah, he was. He was a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah, so that's a really tough look for him. Now, obviously, look, if the Steelers just feel better about Pierre, feel better about Witherspoon, that's one thing. But you are getting to a point in Justin Lane's career where you do wonder about if this kid's ever going to, become anything other than just a depth player on this team.
I mean, it's a serious considering point. Also something crazy when I look back at the snap counts for the season, they only used Akella Witherspoon in 4 snaps against the Raiders in that game. So
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that's the it wasn't like he was even a starter. Like it was just like a hey, can you fill in? Oh gosh, no, you can't. Get the heck out of
Oh,
there. But for different players, paces things come at different paces.
mhm.
It takes sometimes it takes time to acclimate. Sometimes there may be an injury that's not disclosed to us that they're dealing with. But he played 4 snaps in that game, 20 snaps against the Chargers, 15 snaps against the Bengals, and then gets 68 defensive snaps against the Ravens. And will we see him a lot more this year? We're not sure. A lot of this depends on Joe Hayden.
Yeah, the
But
health. Yeah,
and who knows? Maybe this is a one-time thing. But that was a huge performance, and he had a breakup on a pass that was huge. He almost hauled in an interception that pretty much would have closed out the game.
yeah.
So good effort on his part. But other guys that stepped up in this game. Now, Cam Sutton, has to be the top guy. He played every single snap, as did Joe Schobert. Terrell Edmonds playing 65 snaps in this game. I'm looking at these numbers here. Montravius Adams, 34 snaps, 46%. I mean, for a guy to just be plucked off the street, off the practice squad, it wasn't the street, but off the Saints practice squad, and just be like, "Hey, fill in here, buddy." That was a heck of a performance.
It
Not just for making some tackles, but he kept the linebackers clean a lot in this game.
he was. You don't want to say Montravius Adams was key to what the Steelers did defensively, but he was a big. I mean, it was a big part, right? I mean, it was a necessary add to this defensive line. One that last week was, basically didn't even show up to the stadium. I think it allowed them. The last week they tried to play Cam at nose. That didn't really work.
No, it did not work.
So they got but having Adams out there, I thought was kind of a glue piece on this offense or on this defense to kind of get things moving again on that defensive line. And I thought that not only, run defense in this game was good, but I thought even better than that was the ability for them to keep Lamar in the pocket
Yep.
the entire time, right? The kind of, you didn't see this at all against the Chargers. And this was night and day from that. And so, yeah, guys like Adams stepped up and Wormley as well. Those are 2 guys. Again, you just need, it was as Tomlin said during his press conference, this was necessary. This was the necessary adjustment that had to be made. They had to get better play out of these guys or they were going to get absolutely smacked like they did against the Bengals.
Yeah, that's certainly what happened there. And like you said, they needed to keep Lamar Jackson contained. They needed to be aggressive. You can't let him sit back there because eventually he will find ways to hurt you. But when you close things down on him, when you're able to to crunch the pocket and give him tighter spaces and force him to throw into things get harder on him. And and you saw that as the game went on. Also, Dave Damashek, a guy who's been on this show, a guy who knows everything about the Steelers. He pointed out, he was like, people forget that, in that last drive where they did throw a touchdown pass, TJ Watt stripped Lamar Jackson, and if the ball doesn't take the most ridiculous bounce to roll so fast out of bounds that Chris Wormley can't pounce on it, the Steelers would have had the ball and had the game over, and there wouldn't have been a 2-point conversion to defend there. This defense, beyond just TJ Watt getting 3.5 sacks, it did the thing where it had to do to be able to allow its playmakers to be playmakers. Also, I thought Akella Witherspoon playing outside well, Cameron Sutton just being who he has been, Arthur Mollett filling in, even Devin Bush, coming in, filling in. It allowed Minkah FItzpatrick to free up and, hey, go play center field, go watch Lamar Jackson's eyes, trust what you've been studying on tape, and be a playmaker. And that led to an interception early in the game that really kept the Steelers in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a huge play. The Steelers' ability, like you said, to get some pressure on Lamar. And I thought it wasn't just the ability for them to get pressure on Lamar. It was the ability to have a little bit of coverage pressure. And It wasn't like guys were always coming free or they were just, look, obviously we can mock the Ravens offensive line. They're just not very good. And their left tackle, especially. But
who's that? What's his name?
Big Al. I love Big Al.
Yeah,
Big Al puts a big smile on my face every time. But I thought, the coverage did a very good job in this game of not, having open receivers out there and Lamar, kind of at times confused by what he's seeing or just not finding the open guy. And that allowed for, that allowed for the pressure to eventually get there. I think I read a stat that Lamar, that the average time of sack in this game, and Lamar was sacked 7 times in this game. The average time of sack was over 4 seconds. Over 4 seconds, Lamar was back there before getting sacked. And I think one of those, again, was that play where, like you talk about the interception, right? Where, TJ eventually gets free and is chasing down Lamar, and Lamar's trying to make something happen. And then, ridiculous throw on his part and a great play on Minkah's part to be there. But I thought that was a big part of it as well, right? Is give credit to guys like Minkah back there playing center field again, and being that dangerous weapon back there. But also, you talked about Mollett, and you talk about Sutton, you talk about Witherspoon. I mean, all these guys kind of work together to make it happen.
Again, I talked about this yesterday with Arthur Moults. Role players play such an important part in this defense, because again, you need role players to be able to let the playmakers make plays, because if other guys aren't filling their lanes, the offense will find a way to the offense will find a way to exploit them, and then it doesn't matter who you have on the field, because then your role players are being minimized. So big stuff from all those guys around, and the snap count's kind of showing maybe the Steelers are finding some guys. Also, it's worthy of note, Mike Tomlin was asked about Montravius Adams, like, is he going to have a role longer in this defense? He's like, maybe, he was kind of, gave that Tomlin like, yeah, I did. Well, I'm not going to say it, but you can probably say it, because he brought something to the nose tackle position that the Steelers just haven't had since Tyson Alualu was hurt this year. And again, like you were saying, putting Cam Heyward at nose tackle, it wasn't that he couldn't do it, but it's like, hey, now both defensive end positions are being looked at like, hey, well, if Cam's not over there, we're going to run this way. So allowing Cam Heyward to just be in his natural position of sort of being that interior defensive lineman / 3-4 defensive end, that allows him to be such a better player. And it was a huge lift to get all those guys stepping up on defense, especially. And of course, can't overlook John LeGlouse, of course, stepping in on offense and really filling in as the team's 4th or 5th. I've lost track left guard this season, because it's what Dotson and Hassenauer, and then they had Haig, and he was
for a little bit. Yep.
And then they had Finney. So he's the 5th left guard of the season, and he delivered in a big way.
Easy. Yeah, listen, I mean, this is I think the best part of this game, which is that in coming off of a game where the Steelers no-showed, you have all these role players who are making not just stepping up in this big game and playing well, but making their case of like, I need to play more. You know what I mean? Like, LeGlue played, I thought, well enough where it's like, hey, listen, this kid should I don't care if Finney's healthy, Hassenauer gets healthy, like, you just got to see what you got in LeGlue. And I think, the same thing out of Montravius Adams at the nose tackle position. Like, look, Buggs comes back, Carlos Davis comes back. That's fantastic. But let's just see what we got here a little bit in Montravius Adams before we kick this kid back to the practice squad.
Absolutely. We're going to talk a little bit more about this team. We got more things to talk about, more global view of what's going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But first, we got to talk about Built Bar. It's the holiday season. Grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar and like a holiday candy bar. Built Bar filled with so many holiday goodness, rich flavors, that while it's also covered in chocolate, but also amazingly low in calories, low in sugar, low in net carbs, and low in fat, but high in protein. You get the best of both worlds, being delicious and healthy. With so many flavors, you'll have a hard time choosing between raspberry, mint brownie, cherry, or double chocolate, cookies and cream, and of course, peanut butter brownie. Built Bar gives you the extra fuel that you need to bust down those mall doors and battle all the holiday shoppers this shopping season. Or if you're just standing in endless shopping lines, Built Bar can give you that extra something to keep you going. So throw one in your jacket or your purse, because you never know when you're going to need it. Because it's a season of peace and love. Don't bring up your favorite Built Bar flavor at the family parties, because people are so passionate about their favorite flavor. I've argued with Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints about which is the best flavor. It's definitely double chocolate, by the way. But people will fight you over your favorite Built Bar flavors. You got to go and find out what yours is if you haven't already. Go to Built.com and use your promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your next order of Built Bars from Built.com. It's a great opportunity to get something that's not only going to be healthy for you, but also taste amazing. Again, go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15, all capital letters, all one word, and you'll get 15% off your next order. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter here with Tony Serino for a Tony Wednesday. And now, Tony, the Steelers, we take a step back here. We don't have to talk about just the players and stuff, but the Steelers are now on a short week. They are getting ready to play the Minnesota Vikings on a Thursday after a physical game against the Ravens. It's always physical. And Chris Hoke, a former Steeler himself, he has a couple Super Bowl rings with those crew from the 2000s, but he brought up how this could be a rough week because the week after the Steelers play the Ravens, they're usually beat up and they don't play as well. Now, you and I were looking at the numbers over the last 5 or 6 years. It's kind of up and down. It's not really discerning. Like it's not like they're 0-8 against in the games after they play the Ravens in recent years. But I mean, it is a factor when it is a short week and you've been physical. I think what might be the most telling are the upcoming injury reports that come from the Steelers to say who's going to be available, especially for this final practice here on Wednesday.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously getting Joe Hayden back would be big in this one. We talked about Witherspoon, we talked about everybody in that secondary, but Joe Hayden's a veteran leader in that secondary, and
Yes,
you'd love to get him back in this one. Yeah, I'm with you. And then how many bumps and bruises that come along with this, right? Because we in a short week, whereas just take last week, Cam Heyward at the end of last week wasn't feeling well.
Yeah.
If the game was on Thursday or Friday last week, he probably doesn't play in that football game.
He doesn't play, and that changes everything.
And that exactly. And so that I think, we talk about a short week like this. There are guys that potentially could play if this game were on Sunday, but will they not be able to play on this Thursday game? I think I'm with you on that one. And then, I mean, this is a road game too. So this team has to travel out to Minnesota. This team has not done well on the road this year. I think the last time they won on the road was that game against Cleveland, and the time before that was the opener against Buffalo. So it's a huge game on Thursday because you feel great about this team. You feel great about where they are in the division, getting back into it, getting back into the playoff picture and all that. But if you lose to Minnesota, well, you're back to square one in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you're back to 6-1, back to 500. You're going to be, there's going to be teams like the Browns, like the Raiders, like the Broncos who will have a chance to leapfrog you in these AFC standings. But again, you also have a chance to move on the way up. The Bills losing on Monday Night Football, I thought was a huge factor and people were like, "Oh, the tiebreaker." I'm like, the tiebreaker's gone, buddy. When you tie the Lions, it doesn't matter because you can't tie anyone now unless the other teams they tie someone as well, and that's just not going to happen. So forget about the tiebreaker with the Bills or with anybody. But at the same time, it also kind of gives you an edge. You're like, you know what? If this makes it all about just getting the better record, and the Bills right now are only a half game ahead of the Steelers. So if the Bills, they got to play the Buccaneers this week. So if you're able to beat the Vikings on a short week, and then you get a long break after that, that'll give you plenty of time to rest up, refocus, get ready for your next opponent. That's a really good opportunity for the Steelers to rebound. And then if the Bills lose that game, they're 7-6. Maybe you're 7-5-1. You're right back in the hunt of everything. You get a chance to make a move there.
And you got not just the wild card. The division is still in play.
It absolutely is.
You got Baltimore, and look, Cleveland's not very good this year, but they're going to Cleveland. Lamar played really poorly the last time those two teams played. Lamar and the Ravens are coming off of a physical game. The Browns are coming off of a bye week.
They are.
So, and that's like the stupidest part of the NFL schedule this year, by the way, is that they have the Browns schedule is Ravens by Ravens. So they actually play the Ravens twice in a row.
Yeah.
But yeah, very, very silly. And then the Bengals play the Niners this week.
That's no guarantee, especially with the way they played this weekend.
Exactly. And both the Ravens and Bengals have tough games down the stretch. They have the Packers, they have the Rams. So yeah, this is an interesting time for the Steelers. It does look, this game on Thursday seems like the easiest game the Steelers have left. Just if you macro picture and look at everything they have left, this is probably the easiest one. I know people are going to point to Cleveland, but Cleveland's it's a division game. It'll be what it is.
Division games are never easy. I don't care what he says.
Exactly. So Minnesota looks like, okay, this is one you should have as a W. That's why this is so important. That's why it sucks that this comes on a Thursday after Baltimore. Because it is going to make things a little tougher on this team, and it's if you're thinking about this team as a playoff team or even a division winner, you kind of can't lose this one.
Yeah, right. You need to, especially for the division, because if you're going to be able to catch Cincinnati, because Cincinnati to me becomes the team again that you put, even though they got smoked by the Chargers this past weekend, with the Ravens, then losing Marlon Humphrey is going to be a huge hit. I think, I look at that as like a man. They're gonna be in a lot of trouble if they're not able to turn it around. Like you said, they play at Cleveland this week. Versus the Packers at home, then at the Bengals who smoked them, and then you play versus the Rams at home, and then they get the rematch with the Steelers. If their defense is hurt up, that could be a setting up a December that's going to be really rough on them, and then a January that's really rough on them.
Right. Right.
So that puts you back into the situation. Well, are the Bengals in the driver's seat? Well, like you said, they play the Niners at home. That's not an easy game. The Broncos on the road, you think it should be, but the Broncos have hung in there all year as that weird team that competes. You never know. They get the Ravens, so like you said, that could go either way with
And it's
yeah.
whoever wins, the Steelers win. So
Exactly, that works out for you. Then you get the Chiefs, whose defense has really come on as of late, and they're looking like again the Chiefs that not the same way the Chiefs we thought would be in a real threat in the AFC, but they're looking like the way that they're looking like the team that would be in the way this year, and both the Steelers and the Bengals have to play them still. So there's that, and also you finish at the Browns. With the Bengals there's a lot of chance here. There's a lot of chances here for the Steelers. But like you said, it all starts by winning this next game against the Vikings, and then coming home, they're playing the Titans. The Titans haven't exactly been a great team since Derrick Henry got hurt.
Right.
This is your chance to capitalize on these two teams. You can go to a 3-game win streak and then have a chance to play the Chiefs in Kansas City. And if you win that game, I think it's a whole different ball game. But first, it all starts with beating the Vikings this week.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a huge. Listen, how about this team? How about this team that was what were they? 1-3.
1-3 at one point. Yep.
1-3 after the first quarter of the season. Ben is washed. Ben's done. This whole team is done. Wrap it up, and here they are. I mean, look, I love it. I love that this team right now, in a year where yes, the Steelers are like pseudo rebuilding thing going on. Right, Ben Roethlisberger in his last year. I love the idea that this team gets to play spoiler down the stretch, potentially ruining the season of someone like Baltimore, Cincinnati, or definitely Cleveland. Is a massive win for this team, regardless of whether or not they actually do win the division or do make the playoffs. I think just being able to play spoiler down the stretch is fun enough for me.
It certainly makes the season very interesting because again, this is a year where the Bengals were the 1 seed at one point. People thought this was their year. The Browns, this is the year they were going to the Super Bowl. The Ravens, they were unstoppable. Well, they were a team of destiny. All three. This is their years, and here the Steelers are right in the middle of everything. When it's like, wait a minute, I thought you guys were dead. What are you guys doing here? Why are you still competing? So that's the Pittsburgh Steelers fighting to the end. Tony, it's always a pleasure to have you on this show here, my friend. Let me know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Steeler Country, and you can find me on AFC North Talk. It is a roundtable show on YouTube all about the AFC North. So give that a watch and a listen. Again, you can find that on YouTube. Search AFC North Talk. We're on Tuesdays, and actually, our schedule now is kind of wacky. So just subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. You'll be notified whenever we go live. It's kind of random these days.
It's all right. You guys are plenty entertaining. I love seeing you talking to Sonny after a Steelers beat.
Oh, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun.
It's good. It's going to be so much fun. Tony, thanks again for joining the show. As always, you're a treasure to the Locked On Steelers podcast. As a former host that brought me on, and then a guy who's stayed with us even since you've moved on from the show. Thanks again for being with us. I'm Chris Carter, your host of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. You can also read my work at DKPittsburghSports.com. You can listen to the Locked On Steelers podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Odyssey. Don't forget, you can check us out on YouTube. Hit this like button on this video. If you've watched this YouTube video, thank you so much for doing so. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily content. We've got one more episode before the Steelers take on the Minnesota Vikings. We're going to do our crossover Thursday episode with Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. It's going to be a fun one, and then we'll be back up late Thursday night, doing some post game. Believe we will have Jenna Hunter on for that. That should be exciting. So stay tuned, Steelers fans. We'll be right back with more from the Locked On Steelers podcast.